Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the free legal advice show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host Ilyas Bulbulia and I'll be with you for the next hour. As our regular viewers are aware, the free legal advice show provides you, our viewers, the opportunity to call in and ask us any questions that you have on any aspect of English law. On this show, I'm able to cover a vast, diverse range of matters ranging from immigration law matters, family law matters, criminal law matters, personal injury law matters. So whatever your legal questions are, please do get in touch. Two ways to get in touch. You can call on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen and you'll be able to speak to me live on air. Alternatively, another very popular way of getting in touch is to send us a message, a WhatsApp message on the mobile number which also appears at the bottom of the screen. So to speak to me live on air, please ring on the landline number, and to send messages in, please continue to do that on the mobile number which is also there at the bottom of the screen. A couple of minor points before we get going. Sometimes we get calls which are complex, or I need to look at documents before I can advise you properly. If that's the case with your query, if it's a complex matter, or I need to look at your documents before I can give you some thorough advice, then I'll ask you to leave your number with the control room and then we can have that more thorough discussion off air as well. And that's a service that we provide completely free of charge as part of the free legal advice show. Mashallah, we get numerous questions with callers calling in and also messages relating to immigration law matters, which is fantastic. Please do continue to send those questions in. But as I said earlier, other legal questions, family law matters, inheritance law matters, whatever your legal questions are, please do get in touch and I will be able to give you some guidance in relation to those matters. Now, before we've come on air today, we've had a number of immigration law questions coming in. So let's look at those questions and see what the best advice is for our viewers who have been sending these messages in. Now, the first question, immigration law question regarding a BRP card. The BRP card is a visa card. It's a pinkish little card which confirms the kind of visa that you have, how long your visa is for, and it's a question relating to that card that's come in. And the question is as follows. I think our viewer is saying we are in Turkey at the moment. My wife's BRP card is expired. She has indefinite leave to remain in the United Kingdom. What do I do to renew the card? Now, slightly complex, because if you were in the United Kingdom, it would simply be a case of applying for a replacement BRP. Now, that's fairly simple, but I think your matter might be slightly more complex because you might be abroad. So I will address that in greater detail, but we've got a caller who's been waiting for a while. So let me go to our first caller for the day. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Bhai, thank you for calling. What's your question?
I'm based in UK permanently, and I would like to sponsor my nephew from Pakistan.
Okay.
Can you please tell me the requirement for me and for him as well?
Okay. So are you looking at sponsoring him as a visitor to the United Kingdom?
Yeah, visitor, yeah.
All right. Okay. So in terms of his circumstances, if I just get some very brief information from you, what does he do in Pakistan?
He's working in an airline company.
All right. Okay. And is he married? Does he have children? What's his background?
Yeah, he's got children, yeah.
Sorry? Is he married?
Yeah, he's married, yes.
Okay. All right. Right. So in terms of his documents, what you need to bear in mind is they will look at his financial circumstances, his family circumstances. Yeah. So what they're looking at is, will he go back to his home country or not? So if we look at his finances, he would submit evidence of his employment. So, 6 months wage slips, employment letter confirming he's got a permanent job and a holiday so that he can come to the UK, and his bank statements for at least 6 months, 1 year, showing his wages going into his bank account. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
His finances are the key. He has a stable job, money coming in, and holiday from work. That's a key thing that he needs to do. Secondly, he's married. He'd show evidence of his marriage. If he has children, he would show evidence that he has children. If they're at school, there'd be a school letter confirming that the children attend school. The reason for that would be to show, look, I have family to go back to. I've got my wife to go back to. Right. So there are two main things: income and family. Now, does he have any assets or anything like that? Does he have land?
Yeah, he's got his property,
Okay, all right.
where he lives, own property.
Fantastic. So he would put evidence in that he owns that property. Now, a lot of the deeds in Pakistan are in Urdu, so they would need to be translated into English as well.
Yeah, that's okay.
Now, in addition to that, if he can get a valuation report on the property, that would help as well. So income from employment, his family, which is his wife, and his assets, which is the house that he lives in, that's what he would show from there.
Yeah.
From the United Kingdom, you would be the sponsor normally. So you would say he will come and stay with you. And if you've got savings, you could say that I will pay for the tickets as well. So,
well, he's got a free ticket anyway, so he doesn't have to pay.
Right. That's quite helpful. So from your end, copy of your passport, if you have a partner, copy of her passport. And then, are you employed or are you...
I am employed, yeah.
Okay. So you would put in your 6 months wage slips, 6 months bank statements.
How many months of bank statements?
I would normally put 6 months in. You can get away with 3 months as well. You can get away with 3 months. But, if your financial circumstances are quite good and you've had money in your bank account for a while, I would put 6 in. But minimum would be 3 months of bank statements.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Just very roughly, ideally, you'd need about £2,500 in your bank account, if possible.
Yeah, I've got a lot more than that.
All right, mashallah, fantastic. So from your side, you're putting a copy of your passport in. If you're married, copy of your wife's passport in. Ideally, 6 months wage slips, 6 months bank statements, and proof that you own your property, or if you're renting, proof.
I own my property, yeah.
Yeah, so a copy of the deeds for the property. And then in addition to that, you would normally do a letter from here saying, look, this is, I am a British citizen, I'm married, this is where I work, this is what I earn, this is where I live, and this is the number of rooms there are in the property. There's space available for my relative who is coming to the UK, and he will come and stay with me for the duration of his visit. So that's basically what you're doing, saying, he'll stay with me, I will look after him financially when he's here. Obviously, it doesn't cost much for somebody to stay with you for a couple of weeks. And that's what you would be saying.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah, of course you can, yeah.
He has two sisters here living. He's staying with those. He has to mention those sisters, doesn't he?
Yes, so in the online application that he does, they do ask who are your close family members in the United Kingdom. And obviously he has to mention you because you're the sponsor. He should mention immediate family members. So brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts. Yeah,
he's got two sisters, but they have no room to stay and they can't financially support him and sponsor him. That's why I sponsor his elder brother before. He's been in a few times. Okay.
And when he applies, if you have sponsored the brother before and he's gone back in time, you could he could even include a copy of his passport as well. Say, look, or you could mention that. You could include a copy of his passport. Say, look, I've sponsored the brother. He has come on this date and he's left on this date. Here's a copy of his passport. I take my responsibility as a sponsor quite seriously. That would help as well.
Right, that's fine.
So it looks like potentially it's a good application. He looks like he's in a good, stable job. And your financial circumstances, mashallah, seems good as well. So on both fronts, it looks like the requirements potentially would be met.
That's good, yeah. That's fine.
Is that okay?
Thanks very much.
No problem at all. Jazakallah. Thank you very much for your call.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Okay.
You too as well. Assalamu alaikum. That's a call regarding a visitor application and how we can make the application strong. Now, in terms of the previous question relating to an expired BRP, the biometric residence permit, if somebody is in the United Kingdom and the BRP is expired, it is reasonably straightforward. You simply apply to replace the BRP, and it takes a short time. Now, here the slight difficulty is that if the BRP has expired and you're abroad, that does cause a slight difficulty. Ideally, if you are able to travel to the United Kingdom because your passport is such that you can travel visa-free, then obviously you can still come to the United Kingdom and replace your BRP here. Otherwise, you would have to make an application from abroad, and you would have to explain that your BRP card has expired. You'd have to show your travel history as well, because the problem arises in this way. If you've been out of the UK for more than 2 years, you're going to have to apply for a returning resident a visa, which is not guaranteed. However, if you've been away from the United Kingdom for less than 2 years, then your indefinite leave doesn't expire as such. It carries on, and you would have to then apply from abroad for that replacement BRP. So ideally, with these, if you're in the United Kingdom, it does make it easy. If you've got a passport that allows you to come here visa-free, that's easy. Otherwise, you'd have to make that application from abroad. But thank you very much for that question. Very interesting question indeed. We're taking a short break. Inshallah, we'll be back in the next couple of minutes. See you then. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas Bulbulia. To speak to me live on air, please ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, a very popular way of getting in touch is to send us a message on the mobile number which also appears at the bottom of the screen. So, landline number for live calls. Mashallah, we have a lot of questions coming in on WhatsApp. So let me go back to our questions that have come in on WhatsApp. But it's always good to hear from our callers as well. So please do get in touch on that landline number as well. Okay, let's look at the next question that's come in, an immigration law question. Let's read the question out and let's see what the legal position is. So our viewer says, I would like to know what is the best visa application for someone to bring from Pakistan. I recently got married in Pakistan and I want to bring my husband here in the United Kingdom. How can I do that? And what requirements are there for those visas and what are the costs? Okay, quite a long general question there. Interesting question, mashallah. If you've got married in Pakistan and you want to bring your husband to the United Kingdom. Okay, now the question is, what is the best application that you can make to bring your husband to the United Kingdom? Now, in my experience, there are some alternatives, and in limited circumstances, sometimes we have to look at the alternatives. But in my experience, the most practical, easiest and cheapest way to bring your husband to the United Kingdom would be to simply apply for a spouse visa, a partner visa, for your husband to come to the United Kingdom as your partner to join you in the United Kingdom. That's normally, in my experience, in 95% of cases, the best way to go about it. There are some applications where that's not feasible for whatever reason. And then you could potentially look at, if the requirements of those other visa categories are met, potentially you could look at other routes. So somebody could potentially come to the United Kingdom as a student or on the skilled worker visa, the work permit visa, or some other visa, visitor visa, etc., if those requirements are met. But they are in extremely limited circumstances do you look at those alternatives. In the vast majority of cases, if you're married abroad, then you would simply look at making a normal spouse partner visa to bring your husband to the United Kingdom. And the issue is, how do you go about it? Right. Okay. It's an application which I would normally suggest, I would recommend that you get the advice from an immigration lawyer, an experienced immigration lawyer, and get them to prepare the application, because there are a number of requirements that need to be fulfilled. It's quite a complex process that you need to go through. And if you get an immigration lawyer experienced in these matters, he or she should be able to guide you through this process. But in essence, in terms of what the requirements are, if I run through the basics of a spouse partner application, that may assist you. You've said you've got married. I'm assuming it's your first marriage. So you'd be submitting evidence of your marriage, which would take the form of an official marriage certificate. Straightforward. The other thing that your partner would have to do in Pakistan would be to obtain a certificate in English at a very basic level. It's normally the A1 life skills test that people do. There are other tests which are now acceptable to the Home Office as well, but it's a low-level English test that your husband has to do. So he needs to do that. He also needs to get a TB test certificate, which confirms that he does not have TB. Again, fairly straightforward. There are specific clinics that he needs to go to in order to get that. So his end, he will be doing the English test, which is valid for 2 years. He will also be doing the TB test, which is valid for 6 months. So you really need to do the TB test when you're ready to apply. So don't do it too early. Once you're ready to apply, get it done. And I've mentioned the marriage certificate as well. That, assuming this is your first marriage, the official marriage certificate is the document that you would need to submit. So there's some of the documents that you get from Pakistan: the English certificate, the TB certificate, and the marriage certificate. Okay, so they're the three key documents from abroad that you collate. Now, looking at it from your point of view in terms of what you need to do, the key document, the key requirement that you would need to fulfill is the financial requirement. Now, unfortunately, I don't have enough information here to provide you with specific advice on how the financial requirement could be met. And the reason for that is the financial requirement can be met in various ways. Somebody might be employed, somebody might be self-employed as a director of a limited company, somebody might just be a sole trader or a partner, somebody might have rental income, somebody might have a grant in relation to the studies that they're undertaking. So there are various different sources of income that the Home Office will accept as part of you meeting, or your husband meeting, the financial requirement. So finances is one of the key issues, and based on the limited information that I have, I'm not able to give you any specific advice on finances, but you need to bear in mind finances is a key issue. Now, if your situation is the typical situation that one comes across in practice, that you are employed, ideally you've been employed for 6 months, then normally what you'd be looking at doing would be submitting 6 months of wage slips, 6 months of wage bank statements, and an employment letter confirming that you're employed and how much you're earning, etc. So in a very basic application, that's how the financial requirement is met. But I do advise quite strongly that you do get this aspect of your application. Indeed, the whole application checked by a lawyer, because there are little things that you need to look out for. And if you're doing this for the first time, you may not spot the slight problems that there may exist in your application. But from your point of view, finances is one of the key requirements that you need to fulfill. After that, one of the requirements is that there has to be accommodation available for your husband. Understandable, he's coming to join you in the United Kingdom. The Home Office wants to know, where is he going to live? Is there space for him? So that's understandable as well. That's normally a requirement which is quite easily met. You would normally, if you're living with parents, you'd show the proof of ownership of the property, copy of the deeds. You'd get a letter from your parents confirming that they give permission for you and your husband to live at the property. You might get a property inspection report confirming how big the house is and how much space there is for you and your husband, and that there is enough space for both of you. So accommodation, although not looked at too strictly by the Home Office, that is a requirement that still needs to be fulfilled, and you do need to address your mind to that. So the key point you're going to be addressing from here is finances. The second issue that you're going to be addressing from here is the availability of sufficient accommodation for your husband. Lastly, you would need to demonstrate, or both of you would need to demonstrate, that the relationship is genuine and subsisting. Now, on that point, the good news is, where you've only recently been married, maybe 7-8 months, it is relatively straightforward to satisfy this particular requirement. The Home Office, generally speaking, only wants to look at your photographs together. So it would be your wedding photographs, and it's your non-wedding photographs when you're out and about. You've gone out to a restaurant, you've gone out together, some of your casual photos, selfies, etc. So a selection of those photographs, 20, 30, is normally enough to satisfy the Home Office that the relationship is genuine and subsisting. So they're the three things from your point of view: your income, the availability of suitable, sufficient accommodation, and demonstrating that the relationship is genuine and subsisting. Now, that's a very quick overview of how you put a spouse application together. But thank you very much for that question. We've had a number of questions coming in, so we'll continue to go through your questions, your immigration law questions, and your other legal questions. But please do get in touch on the landline number as well. It's always good to hear from our viewers live on air as well. Okay. Okay, next question is from Brother Akhtar, and he says as follows. Assalamu alaikum, watching Sky Immigration. I have a question on immigration. I wanted to apply for my mother, who's 65 years old, and my brother, who is 28 years old. I'm assuming that they want to apply on a visit visa. I'm assuming that. They did both come to the United Kingdom in 2013, and they went back within 3 months. That's always good. They came from Bangladesh. What would I need to sponsor them? Would appreciate your reply. Okay. Visitor question. We got a similar question from a caller that called in as well. Now, so there are 2 people that you want to sponsor to come to the United Kingdom as a visitor. Mother, who is 65 years old, and brother, who is 28 years old. Now, the good thing is here, they were previously granted a visitor visa, and normally you're allowed to stay in the United Kingdom for 6 months. And you said in the question that you've sent to us that they went back in 3 months, which is always a good sign and a real plus point when you're applying for a visitor visa, to be able to show that you've complied with the visitor visa rules on a previous occasion as well. Question you're asking is, what do I need? Look, from your end, you are the financial sponsor, I'm assuming. And what you need to show is a number of simple things. Before we look at the documents that you need to submit, if you look at what you're trying to demonstrate, then we look at the documents that you need to demonstrate that. So what are you trying to demonstrate as a sponsor of a visitor? We're taking a short break. Inshallah, we'll be back in the next couple of minutes. See you then. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the free legal advice show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host Ilyas Bulbulia. To speak to me live on air, please ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, as always, you can send in your messages on the mobile number which also appears at the bottom of the screen. So the landline number for the live call and mobile number for WhatsApp messages, text messages. MashaAllah. First of all, what your status is in the United Kingdom, and if you're married, what your wife's status is in the United Kingdom. So obviously the Home Office wants to know, who is this person who is sponsoring these people from abroad? What are their rights to stay in the United Kingdom? So understandable, your status is something that we would need to address. Normally straightforward. Secondly, if you're saying that I will look after them financially, then we would need to show your ability to financially sponsor your relatives from abroad. So your status, your financial circumstances. And then obviously when they're coming over from Bangladesh, they're going to be staying with you. I assume they won't be staying in a hotel, they'll be staying with you. Now, if they're doing that, then the Home Office will want to know that there is accommodation available for them to stay at. So they're the key things that the Home Office will be looking at. Your status, your finances, to see whether you can financially sponsor your relatives or not. And when, assuming they'll be staying with you, whether there is sufficient accommodation available for them. So that's what you're trying to demonstrate as a sponsor. How do you demonstrate it? Look, your status, simple. A copy of your passport. I'm assuming you're a British citizen. If you're not, you would show what status you have, what kind of leave you've got in the United Kingdom. You're demonstrating your status in the United Kingdom. Normally, it's just a copy of your British passport and your partner's British passport as well. Now, moving on to the second bit, you're the financial sponsor. Can you sponsor them financially? How do you demonstrate that? Well, you normally show that you are employed and you've got some savings. So let's say, for example, you submit from your end 3 months of wage slips or 6 months of wage slips. Hopefully it'll be a reasonable wage. You don't necessarily need an employment letter, but you could get an employment letter confirming your employment if you want. And you show your bank statement to say, look, this is my money coming in from my employment and I've got a bit of savings as well. And I tend to advise clients that have savings of about £2,500. That's normally sufficient for a sponsor. There's no hard and fast rule relating to this. You could probably get away with a lower amount as well. But look, slightly more always looks better. So you're submitting evidence of your employment, your income and your savings by submitting your wage slips, 3 months or 6 months, your bank statements, 3 months or 6 months. So you're showing, look, I have money coming in, I have a bit saved up as well. So I can sponsor my mum and dad from Bangladesh in this case. Now, I did mention the figure of £2,500. Normally, for one person, that's sufficient. You could probably get away with £2,500 for two people as well. What I would advise is that if there are two people, that instead of having 2.5, let's say you've got £3,500. So this is just a rough guide that I personally use. Have about savings of about 2.5 if it's a single person. If it's two people coming over, have about £3,500. And to give you an idea, where do I come up with these figures from? The £2,500 figure I come up with on the basis that most airline tickets nowadays are between £500 to £1,000, depending on when you're travelling. So that's some money taken up there. When somebody comes here, lives with you for a month, 2 months, we know the cost of that is minimal, but let's put a figure on it. Let's say the cost of that is £500 to £1,000. So that's what you're trying to cover. If you've got about £2,500, you're comfortably covering the cost of the flights, and you're comfortably covering the cost of them living with you, the slight additional costs that you might incur with them living with you. And you'll have money left over as well. I do apologize. You'll have money left over for your own expenses as well. So that's where we're coming from in terms of that particular figure of £2,500. Now, you're also demonstrating you have sufficient accommodation for them. And they're relatively straightforward. You don't need to go into too much detail. Normally, in terms of documentary evidence, all you're submitting is a proof of the kind of accommodation that you have available. So it might be you own the property, in which case you might submit a copy of your deeds. If it's the case that you are renting the property, then you would submit a copy of the tenancy agreement. So they're the two things that you would be doing as well. So finances, you'd be dealing with, and accommodation as well. So that's what you would do as a sponsor when you're sponsoring somebody to come to the United Kingdom. Now, in terms of what your relatives who are in Bangladesh, what do they need to do? And really, I normally say that you're looking at demonstrating their finances, you're demonstrating their family circumstances, and you're also demonstrating, related to finances, whether they've got assets that they own in their home country as well. So finances, always a key issue. Finances, they're looking at that to see whether you're well enough, you'll go back or not. So if somebody's employed, evidence of employment. If somebody is self-employed, evidence of self-employment as well. And that would be done by showing the relevant documentary evidence, showing bank statements as well. So finances is always a key issue when you are sponsoring somebody from abroad. Family circumstances, you would demonstrate who's there. So mum's coming here. If your dad's still alive, then you'd show evidence of your dad being living there in Bangladesh with your mum as well. Brother coming to the United Kingdom, I see brother is 28 years old. If brother is married, you'd also submit evidence of brother's marriage, who his wife is, and the fact that she's there in Bangladesh. If there are children, you'd submit evidence of that as well. And then assets, if they own property, you'd submit evidence of that. Now, going back to the point you made, back in 2013, your mum and brother came to the United Kingdom on a visit visa, and they went back. Try and put in a copy of their old passport as well to show that they have previously been to the United Kingdom and returned. They will be asked that question when they complete their online application form. Have you travelled to the UK? What reason did you travel to the UK? How long did you stay, etc.? So you would put that evidence in anyway. Now, hopefully, if you do all that, strong evidence from your side and also evidence from their side in terms of their income, etc., then hopefully the application will be successful. But that's what you need to do in order to try and make a visitor application successful. Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that question. We've had a number of questions on visitor applications coming in, which is fantastic. Please do continue to send your questions in, and you can speak to us live on air on that landline number, which also appears at the bottom of the screen. Now, got another question, which is a family law question. Not sure what realistically you can do here. A question that's come in from Miss Ali. I have a family matter inquiry. Baby is in foster care. The social worker wants to send the baby to Canada for adoption. The baby's auntie is there. Can I stop that? What can I potentially do? That's quite a complex matter, and really what I would advise is that you speak to a family lawyer in relation to that. I think the difficulty here is this, that the way adoption normally works, once adoption does take place, normally the contact with the biological parents normally does come to an end at that stage, especially normally it's phased out. And by the time adoption takes place, normally contact with biological parents does come to an end. So it is quite a complex matter, and obviously a very serious matter from your end as well. I would speak to a family lawyer. Ideally, if money is an issue, that you contact a firm that undertakes or provides free legal advice. Most firms that do legal aid work will provide initial advice to you for free or not, even if you're not covered. Most lawyers that do legal aid work are happy to provide initial advice. So what I would advise you is that, look, take the advice of a couple of lawyers on this issue, and get an idea about realistically whether there's anything you can do or not realistically. Because if the legal advice that you receive is that realistically nothing can be done here, the adoption process would really mean the end of your contact with the child, and therefore your wishes aren't really going to be taken into account, because you won't be having contact with the child. Now, if that's the case, if that's the advice that you get from a number of family lawyers, then it may mean that you can't really pursue this any further. But what I would do is advise you to speak to a couple of family lawyers. Hopefully, you'll get a feel for whether there are any options or not here. Now, I do appreciate it is a serious matter, and it's not a normal family law question. I have dealt with some adoption matters, but I would advise you to speak to a specialist family lawyer in relation to this. And I completely understand where you're coming from. Canada is quite far. You won't be able to have contact with the child after the adoption. But Jazakallah for that question. Now, the next question that's come in is an interesting question regarding changing one's name. So not specifically, but I will look at this in greater detail after we've come back from our short break. Inshallah, we'll be back in the next couple of minutes. See you then. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas Bulbulia. To speak to me live on air, please ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. As always, popular way of getting in touch is to send us a message on the mobile number which also appears at the bottom of the screen. Now, just before the break, we were looking at the question relating to changing one's name on one's passport. Now, as I said, it is relatively straightforward when you're an adult. When it comes to children, it is slightly more problematic. So in terms of adults in the United Kingdom, certainly with the British passport, it is dead straightforward. You normally complete a change of name deed. They call it a deed poll, where you're confirming that this is my old name, this is my new name, and I want to be known by my new name from now on. Straightforward. Our passport office normally wants some proof that you're using the new name, so try and get a bill in your new name. So as far as a UK passport is concerned, really it's as simple as that. You complete a change of name deed, a deed poll, get a document, official document, a bill or something in your new name, and make an application for a replacement passport. Submit those two documents, and it is really that straightforward. Fair enough, there's some delays in the passport office at the moment, so it may take a bit of time to get your passport back, but it's straightforward. There's nothing complicated. That's all you need to do. Now, so the question that you've raised is specifically, you're saying that the husband has left you approximately 5 years ago, and you want to change the name back to father's name. So really, it's as simple as that. Now, the only situation in which it gets a bit complicated is where the passport that you hold is a non-British passport. I'm assuming that is not the case here, but let's say it's a non-British passport. Then what happens is that you need to contact the consulate or the embassy of the country where you're from to find out what their procedure is, because every country has its own procedure. Pakistan has its own procedure. India, for example, has its own procedure. From my recollection, it's quite complex. You need to advertise the change of your name in a local paper as well, and in the local paper from the place that you are from back home as well. So when it comes to changing the name in a passport, in a foreign passport, it may become a bit difficult. But as far as British passports are concerned, and looking at the question that you posed, to me, it looks like you're trying to change your British name in your British passport. It is really straightforward. Change of deed poll and an official document like a bill in your new name. So, by all means, if you want to change your name, go for it. Cost-wise, deed poll might cost something in the region of about £70–80. You can get it done online as well. Normally it's easier just to get a solicitor to do it. They'll stamp it and verify it as well for you. So cost is straightforward. Replacement passport, that's in the region of about £70–80 as well. So the process is not very expensive. So that's the first part of your question. Okay, let's look at the second part. My children have their husband's name. Okay, so you're changing your name. Children have their husband's name as their surname, understandable. Is it okay for me and my children to have different surnames? Absolutely no problem with that at all. Not that uncommon either. So I wouldn't worry about that. So if you want to change your name, don't be concerned about the fact that your surname will be different to your children's. That's not a problem as well at all. You can have that. Now, sometimes if you're traveling at the airport on your own with the children and the names are different, for some airlines, the staff might ask you whether they're your children or not. Just take along their birth certificates, which confirms that you are the mother and the change of name deed. So that in itself wouldn't be a problem. But in my experience, that happens in very, very few isolated cases, but it's not a problem at all having a different surname. Okay, so that's the second part to your question. You then go on to say, my husband left and said talaq on chat and then deleted it. So we're still in this separation and conflict relating to if I'm divorced or not, and he won't provide paperwork. Okay, I think that is obviously a question that our Mufti Saab would be able to comment on. My limited knowledge doesn't really extend that far. But as far as the issue relating to changing of name, there's no issue surrounding that at all. And in practice, this is something that comes up regularly where people want to change their names. The practicalities are straightforward. Normally, the issue arises in with immigration cases where somebody's here from abroad, they've managed to get their indefinite leave, they've got their nationality now, they want to apply for a new passport, and at that stage, when they're applying for their first British passport that they turn around and say, you know what, look, there's always been a slight problem with my name. My name's been too long. I want to shorten it, or it's been spelled incorrectly before, and I want to change it. Can I do it now? And normally it's fine. There is an additional problem that sometimes arises, which is the Home Office will want to make sure that if you have other passports, that you've changed your name in those other passports as well. So if you've got, for example, a Pakistani passport, they will want to make sure that you've changed your name in the Pakistani passport as well. And if you've got a passport where you would normally give up that nationality, for example, Indian nationality, you need to give that up if you're applying for British nationality. They might want some confirmation that you've actually revoked your previous nationality. So the Passport Office is trying to avoid a situation where you have different names in different documents. So one particular spelling or one particular version of your name in one passport, and then you have a British passport in a completely different name. So they want consistency across the passport. So that's just one other matter that you need to be aware of. But thank you very much indeed for that question. Okay, let's look at the next question that's come in, sort of a document-related question as well, relating to powers of attorney. So our brother says, Assalamu alaikum, would you be able to advise on how I go about making a power of attorney in relation to a piece of land abroad in Pakistan? I want to give the power to a relative as I can't travel there with work commitments that I have here. Okay, so another common question relating to documents, which is powers of attorney. And it normally, you get different types of powers of attorney. Sometimes it's to do with issues here. Sometimes it's to do with somebody who's unwell, and they want to make a lasting power of attorney. They are different. This particular matter that's been referred to is really giving somebody permission abroad to act on your behalf in relation to matters that need to be dealt with by you. So it's a typical power of attorney that you do where you have land, you have a bank account, you have other issues going on abroad, and you can't attend to those matters. So you want your friend, relative, lawyer to deal with those matters abroad. So there's a specific document that you can sign, giving that authority to that named person, whether it's a relative, it's a friend, it's a lawyer. You're giving authority to that named person to act as your attorney, to act on your behalf, and you would then be bound by what your attorney does. So it's a specific document which is drawn up by a lawyer, and it's a document which would normally have to be signed before a lawyer as well, before a foreign department, foreign court will accept that particular document. So that's a power of attorney, relatively straightforward. Now, again, once the power of attorney is made, depending on the country where that power of attorney is going to be used, there are different rules relating to what additional steps you need to take. So if I take, for example, Pakistan, if you make this power of attorney, giving a power to a relative abroad who's going to act on your behalf in Pakistan, you need to take this power of attorney along to the consulate for you to sign there, and for it to be verified there as well before consulate staff. If normally you're using that document to use in the Middle East, most of those countries will say to you that that document needs to be legalized. So it would need to be sent to the legalization office here, where the solicitor that you've signed before, their signature would be verified by the legalization office. Some countries won't require either. So they won't require you to take the document to the local consulate embassy, and neither will they require you to get the document legalized either. Just you having a document signed before a lawyer appointing your attorney abroad would be sufficient. So you just need to make sure that you follow the right process. Now, what you do need to be careful about is that when you make the power of attorney, there are two types. You get a limited one, where you're given limited authority to your attorney to act on your behalf. Then there are general powers of attorney, where your attorney can take numerous steps, not limited to anything, so they can act on your behalf on quite a wide range of matters. So you need to try and work out which type of document do you want, what type of permission do you want to give to your attorney, because ultimately with that document you're giving over a lot of power to your attorney to act on your behalf. So you need to make sure that that isn't abused in any way. So I hope that answers your question in relation to powers of attorney. Generally, my view is if you want this document drafting, they're not particularly expensive, but you should speak to an immigration lawyer or a lawyer that deals with these kind of matters, and they can advise you properly on that. So I hope that answers that question. Fortunately, that brings us to the end of the show. Inshallah, we'll be back next week at the same time. Until then, Assalamu alaikum.